My name is Caroline, and I am 32 years old. I still remember standing at the altar on what should have been the happiest day of my life, watching my mother's face contort with disgust as she loudly declared, "This is a disgrace to our family." The church fell silent. 200 guests turned to stare. My fiancé Marcus squeezed my hand, but I could feel him trembling. My father stood from his seat in the front pew, his face red with barely contained rage. "We raised you better than this," he announced to the entire congregation. "Marrying beneath yourself. Bringing shame to the Wellington name. If you have ever been publicly humiliated by your own family on a day that was supposed to be about love and celebration, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button. And stay for a story about the day my family's cruelty backfired in the most spectacular way possible. Growing up as Caroline Wellington meant living under a microscope of impossible expectations. My family was old money, the kind that traced back 5 generations to railroad barons and steel magnates. Our estate in Connecticut sat on 50 acres, complete with a main house, guest cottages, stables, and gardens maintained by a full-time staff. To outsiders, we were the picture of American aristocracy. Behind closed doors, we were something else entirely. My father, Richard Wellington III, ran the family investment firm with an iron fist and an outdated sense of superiority. At 6 feet 1 inch with silver hair and custom Seville row suits, he looked every inch the patrician he believed himself to be. He had been groomed from birth to carry on the Wellington legacy, and he approached fatherhood with the same cold calculation he brought to his business deals. "Excellence is not optional in this family," was his favorite saying, usually delivered while critiquing my report cards, my posture, or my choice of friends. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough, but he made it clear that my primary value lay in making an advantageous marriage that would expand the family's social and financial network. My mother, Victoria Wellington, was the daughter of a prominent Boston family. She had married my father at 22 after a courtship orchestrated by their respective parents. By the time I was born, she had perfected the art of cold, performative motherhood. She knew how to host charity galas and plan elaborate parties, but genuine maternal warmth was beyond her capability. "Emotions are for the lower classes," she would say dismissively whenever I showed feelings she deemed inappropriate. Crying was weakness. Anger was unseemly. Joy that was too exuberant was vulgar. Under her tutelage, I learned to present a polished facade while burying my true self deeper and deeper. Then there was my younger brother, Richard IV, whom everyone called Rick. 3 years my junior, Rick had been born to carry on the family name in a way that my gender prevented me from doing, at least in my parents' antiquated worldview. From birth, he could do no wrong. Where I was constantly corrected and criticized, Rick was indulged and praised. His mediocre grades were signs of creative thinking. His cruel pranks were just boyish high spirits. His entitled attitude was confident leadership. I remember when I was 14 and Rick was 11. I had spent months preparing for a piano recital, practicing for hours every day. The night of the performance, Rick threw a tantrum because he wanted to go to a friend's house instead of attending my recital. My parents gave in immediately, and we all went to Rick's friend's house, skipping my performance entirely. When I protested, my mother accused me of being selfish for not considering Rick's needs. This pattern continued throughout our childhood and into our adult years. Rick attended an Ivy League school where my father's donations ensured his acceptance despite barely passing the entrance exams. I graduated summa cum laude from the same university, having earned my place through actual merit, but my accomplishment was overshadowed by Rick's existence there at all. After college, Rick was given a vice president position at the family firm despite having no real qualifications or work ethic. I, on the other hand, was encouraged to pursue something suitable for a woman, preferably something that would allow me to focus on finding an appropriate husband. Art history, perhaps. Or charity work. Instead, I did something my family considered unforgivable. I got a real job. I took a position as a junior analyst at a tech startup in San Francisco, as far from Connecticut as I could get while staying in the continental United States. The salary was modest, the hours were brutal, and my family was horrified. "You are throwing away everything we have given you," my father raged during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. Working like a common employee. Living in some cramped apartment. Associating with God knows what kind of people. But for the first time in my life, I was happy. I was good at my job, identifying promising investments, and helping guide the company's portfolio. Within 2 years, I had been promoted twice. Within 4 years, I was a senior partner. And within 6 years, I had left to start my own venture capital firm specializing in female-founded tech companies. My family's reaction to my success was not pride but embarrassment. Working was bad enough. Working in technology was worse. And starting my own business? That was positively vulgar. "The Wellington name is being associated with commerce," my mother complained. "Do you know what people are saying at the club?" I stopped trying to win their approval and focused on building my life and my business. And that is when I met Marcus. Marcus Chin was a software engineer at one of the companies in my investment portfolio. The first time I met him, he was presenting his team's new AI project to potential investors. He was brilliant, articulate, and passionate about his work. He was also everything my family would hate. His parents were immigrants from Taiwan who had built a successful chain of restaurants through decades of hard work. Marcus had put himself through MIT on a combination of scholarships and part-time jobs. He had no trust fund, no family connections, no pedigree. What he had was intelligence, integrity, and a genuinely kind heart. We started dating 6 months after we met. Marcus made me laugh in a way I had not experienced since childhood. He listened when I talked, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak. He respected my career ambitions and encouraged my growth. He was, in every way that mattered, a good man. I did not tell my family about him for nearly a year. I knew what their reaction would be, and I was not ready to deal with it. But when Marcus proposed, I could not put off the conversation any longer. The day I brought Marcus to Connecticut to meet my family was one of the most uncomfortable of my life. My mother's expression when she opened the door and saw Marcus beside me was a mixture of shock and barely concealed horror. "Caroline," she said, her voice tight. "You did not mention you were bringing a guest." "This is Marcus Chin," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "My fiancé." The silence that followed was deafening. My father appeared in the doorway, his face already hardening as he assessed Marcus with unconcealed disapproval. Dinner that evening was excruciating. My parents asked Marcus questions designed to highlight the differences between his background and theirs. Where did his family come from? What did his father do? Where did he go to preparatory school? Each answer seemed to deepen their disappointment. Rick, who had shown up halfway through dinner, already half drunk, was openly hostile. "So you're a computer programmer," he said with undisguised disdain. "That is like, what, fixing people's printers and stuff?" "Rick," I said warningly. Marcus, to his credit, handled it with grace. "I am a software engineer specializing in machine learning and artificial intelligence. I lead a team developing predictive algorithms for healthcare applications." Rick snorted. "Sure. Sounds made up." After Marcus excused himself to use the restroom, my father did not waste time. "You cannot seriously be considering marrying this man." "I am not considering it," I replied calmly. "I am doing it. We have set a date for June." My mother's hand flew to her chest as if I had announced a terminal diagnosis. "Caroline, think of the family. Think of your position. This man is not one of us." "You are right," I said, surprising them with my agreement. "He is better than us. He is kinder, more accomplished on his own merit, and actually capable of love. All things you have never demonstrated." My father's face turned purple. "If you go through with this wedding, you will be disowned. Cut off completely. No more trust fund. No more family support. No more Wellington name." I stood up from the table. The trust fund was always a leash, Dad. And the Wellington name has become more of a burden than a privilege. As for family support, I have been on my own since I moved to San Francisco. You have made it clear over and over that your love comes with conditions I am unwilling to meet. "You are making the biggest mistake of your life," my mother said, her voice cold. "No," I replied. The biggest mistake of my life was spending so many years trying to win approval from people incapable of giving it. I collected Marcus and we left. As we drove away from the estate, I felt lighter than I had in years. I knew what I was giving up, the money, the family connection, the safety net. But what I was gaining, a life with someone who truly loved me, was worth infinitely more. Over the next 6 months, my family made several attempts to break up my engagement. My mother called with increasingly desperate warnings about the mistake I was making. My father tried to bribe Marcus to leave me, offering him money to disappear. Rick left drunken voicemails calling Marcus racial slurs and me a disgrace to the family. Through it all, Marcus remained steady. We do not need their approval, he reminded me. We only need each other. We planned a modest wedding. Neither of us wanted anything ostentatious. We booked a small church in San Francisco, invited close friends and Marcus's family, and hired a simple caterer. The guest list was under 200 people, most of them friends from the tech community and Marcus's extended family. I sent invitations to my family out of obligation more than hope. I did not expect them to attend, and I certainly did not expect them to be civil if they did. But 3 weeks before the wedding, my mother called. "Your father and I have discussed it," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "We will attend the wedding. After all, you are still our daughter, regardless of your choices." I was not naive enough to think this represented a change of heart. More likely, they were concerned about appearances. Not attending their only daughter's wedding would raise questions among their social circle. But I appreciated the gesture, however hollow. "Thank you," I said simply. "I will make sure you are on the list." "We will be bringing Rick and his fiancée as well," she continued. "And your father's business partner, the Harrisons and the Vanderbilts. It is important that the family be properly represented." My heart sank. She was turning my small, intimate wedding into a social obligation, bringing along witnesses to judge and criticize. But I had invited them, and I could not uninvite their guests now. "Fine," I said. "Just let me know final numbers." The morning of the wedding arrived bright and clear. I woke up in the apartment I shared with Marcus, feeling a mixture of excitement and dread. Today I would marry the love of my life, but I would also have to endure my family's presence and inevitable disapproval. My bridesmaids, for close friends from college and work, helped me get ready. My dress was simple but elegant, a fitted lace gown that made me feel beautiful without being ostentatious. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I felt a moment of pure happiness. "You look stunning," my best friend Sophie said, adjusting my veil. "Marcus is going to cry when he sees you," added Jenna, another bridesmaid. At the church, I could feel the divide in the crowd. On Marcus's side sat his parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends. They were laughing and talking, clearly happy to be there. On my side sat my family and their friends, looking as if they were attending a funeral rather than a wedding. As I walked down the aisle on the arm of Marcus's father, who had graciously agreed to give me away when my own father refused, I could see Marcus waiting at the altar. His face lit up when he saw me, and I saw tears in his eyes, just as my bridesmaids had predicted. The ceremony began smoothly. The officiant, a friend of Marcus's family, spoke about love and partnership with genuine warmth. Marcus and I exchanged our personally written vows, promising to support each other through whatever challenges life brought. And then, just as the officiant asked if anyone objected to the marriage, my mother stood up. "I object," she said loudly, her voice cutting through the sacred space. "This entire proceeding is a disgrace." The church fell silent. Every head turned to stare. The officiant looked shocked, clearly unprepared for an actual objection. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please sit down." But she was just getting started. "This woman," she gestured at me with undisguised contempt, "is throwing away everything her family has built. Generations of careful breeding and social positioning, all wasted on a marriage to someone so far beneath her station." Marcus's hand tightened on mine, but I could feel him trembling. His family looked horrified. My friends looked ready to physically remove my mother from the church. My father stood as well, adding his voice to the condemnation. "The Wellington family has standards. We have expectations. This union meets none of them." Caroline, you are disgracing yourself, your family, and everyone in your lineage. Rick rose too, swaying slightly from whatever he had been drinking before the ceremony. My sister, everyone, he slurred with a mocking bow. Trading her birthright for a nobody. At least the rest of us have maintained some dignity. The officiant tried to restore order. Perhaps we should take a brief recess. No, I said firmly, finding my voice. I turned to face my family. You have spent my entire life making me feel like I was not good enough. Like I needed to earn your love through achievement, through obedience, through making myself smaller to fit your narrow definition of acceptable. Well, I am done. You are making a spectacle, my mother hissed. You are the ones making a spectacle, I shot back. You are the ones who stood up at a wedding to announce your own prejudice and small-mindedness. You want to talk about disgrace? Look in a mirror. You will regret this, my father said coldly. When his business fails, when you realize what you have given up, when you come crawling back, we will not be there. Good, I said. Because I do not want you there. Marcus and I are building a life based on love and respect, not money and status. We do not need your approval or your support. My mother's face twisted. You think you are so independent, so successful. But you are nothing without the Wellington name and money. You will see how far you get on your own. At that moment, my phone buzzed with a notification. So did Marcus's. And based on the sudden murmuring in the crowd, many other guests had received the same alert. Sophie, standing near the front, looked at her phone and gasped. Caroline, she said, her eyes wide. Did you know about this? Know about what? I asked, confused. She held up her phone, showing me a breaking news alert. Tech unicorn IPO. Venture First Capital goes public. Valuation reaches $8.2 billion. My company. My venture capital firm. We had been planning to go public for months, but I had deliberately kept the exact timing quiet. I had not wanted my wedding overshadowed by business news. That is your company, Sophie said unnecessarily. Caroline, if they are valued at $8.2 billion and you own 45%, I finished quietly. The math was simple. I was now worth approximately $3.7 billion. The news rippled through the church like wildfire. Guests pulled out their phones, checking the story. The tech community friends who had known about my company but not the specifics of the IPO began to understand the magnitude of what had just happened. And my family, who had assumed I was running some small, barely successful boutique firm, stood frozen as the reality sank in. $3.7 billion, someone whispered loudly enough to be heard throughout the church. My father's face had gone from red to white. My mother looked as if she might faint. Rick stared at his phone, refreshing the page as if the numbers might change. That cannot be right, my mother stammered. Your little company is not little, Marcus said, speaking for the first time since the disruption. His voice was calm but carried an edge of satisfaction. Caroline is one of the most successful venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. She has a portfolio of over 50 companies, 12 of which have been acquired for significant sums. Venture First Capital is recognized as the leading investor in female-founded tech startups. She never told us, my father said weakly. You never asked, I replied. You were too busy being disappointed in me for working at all to pay attention to what I was actually accomplishing. The officiant, recovering from the shock, cleared his throat. Perhaps we could continue with the ceremony? Yes, I said firmly. Let's finish what we came here to do. My family, now looking shell-shocked rather than superior, sat down slowly. The rest of the ceremony proceeded without further interruption. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the church erupted in applause, much of it from Marcus's side of the crowd. As we walked back down the aisle as a married couple, I felt Marcus lean close and whisper, "You should have told me your company was going public today." I wanted today to be about us, not about money, I whispered back. The timing was just coincidence. The SEC approved everything yesterday. At the reception, the atmosphere was decidedly different from the ceremony. My family sat at their assigned table, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Several times I saw my father attempting to catch my eye, clearly wanting to approach me. I ignored him. Marcus's family, in contrast, were joyful and celebratory. His mother pulled me aside at one point, tears in her eyes. "Welcome to our family," she said warmly. "We are so happy to have you." The contrast between her genuine affection and my own mother's cold calculation was stark. "Thank you," I said, hugging her. "I am happy to be part of it." Midway through the reception, as Marcus and I were cutting the cake, my mother finally approached. "Caroline," she said, her voice carefully modulated. "Perhaps we were hasty earlier." In the emotion of the moment. "Stop," I interrupted. "I know what you are doing. You are trying to backtrack now that you know I am worth $3.7 billion. But here's the thing, Mom. My net worth did not change who I am. I was the same person an hour ago that I am now. The only thing that changed is your perception of what I can offer you." "That is not fair," she protested weakly. "Is it not?" I asked. "Tell me honestly. If I had not become a billionaire today, would you be trying to make amends?" Her silence was answer enough. My father appeared at her side, his expression a mixture of calculation and something that might have been regret. "Caroline, we clearly underestimated your business acumen. Perhaps we should discuss." "There is nothing to discuss," I said firmly. "You made your opinion of my choices very clear. You called me a disgrace in front of 200 people. You tried to humiliate me and Marcus on our wedding day. The fact that I am suddenly wealthy does not erase that." "We are your parents," my mother said, and for the first time, I heard a crack in her controlled voice. "Surely we can put this behind us." I looked at them both, really looked at them. I saw the realization dawning that they had miscalculated badly. They had bet on me failing, on me needing them, on me coming back defeated. Instead, I had succeeded beyond anything they had imagined, and I had done it without them. "You can be my parents," I said quietly. "But that is a relationship built on mutual respect and unconditional love, not on net worth or social standing. Until you can understand that, we have nothing to discuss." Marcus appeared at my side, taking my hand. "Everything okay here?" "Everything is fine," I said, turning away from my parents. "Dance with me." As we moved to the dance floor, I caught a glimpse of my parents standing where I had left them, looking lost and uncertain. Rick sat slumped at his table, drinking heavily. The society friends they had brought looked uncomfortable, clearly aware of the scandal unfolding. "Do you think they will ever understand?" Marcus asked as we swayed to the music. "I do not know," I admitted. "Maybe someday. But it does not matter anymore. I do not need their understanding or their approval. I have you, I have our life together, and I have the satisfaction of knowing I built something meaningful on my own terms." The rest of the reception passed in a blur of dancing, laughter, and genuine celebration. My family left early, slipping out without saying goodbye. I barely noticed. That night, as Marcus and I finally returned to our hotel suite, exhausted but happy, I checked my phone one last time. There were dozens of congratulations messages about the IPO, interview requests from major media outlets, and business inquiries. And there was one text from my mother: "We need to talk about your trust fund and family holdings." I deleted it without responding. The weeks following the wedding were chaotic. The IPO made national news, and suddenly I was being profiled in major business publications. Forbes, Fortune, and the Wall Street Journal all wanted interviews. I was invited to speak at conferences and join boards of directors. The attention was overwhelming but gratifying. My family made several more attempts to reconnect. My father sent letters through his lawyer, talking about family investments and suggesting ways we could work together. My mother called repeatedly, leaving voicemails that started accusatory and gradually became more conciliatory. Rick sent a drunken email apologizing for his behavior and asking for a loan. I ignored them all. Marcus and I were focused on our life together, which now included navigating the complexities of sudden extreme wealth while trying to maintain normalcy. "How does it feel?" Sophie asked me one afternoon over coffee. "Being a billionaire?" I thought about the question carefully. Honestly, the money is not the important part. What matters is that I proved something to myself. That I could build something meaningful without my family's support or approval. The financial success is nice, but the personal victory is better. 6 months after the wedding, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. My mother appeared without warning, looking older and more uncertain than I had ever seen her. "Before you throw me out," she said quickly, "I just want 5 minutes. Please." Against my better judgment, I gestured to a chair. 5 minutes. She sat down, clutching her handbag like a lifeline. "I have been going to therapy," she began, surprising me. "The therapist suggested I needed to understand why I reacted the way I did at your wedding. Why I have treated you the way I have your whole life. And?" I prompted when she paused. "And I have been forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself," she continued. "About how I was raised, how I learned to value money and status over genuine connection. How I repeated those patterns with you." I waited, not making this easy for her. "I am not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I am trying to change. Your father is not there yet, and Rick has his own issues to work through. But I am trying." "Why no?" I asked. "Because I am wealthy? Because I am successful?" "No," she said, and for once she looked me directly in the eyes. "Because I saw your wedding photos. You and Marcus and his family, all looking so happy. And I realized that I have never felt that kind of joy. I have never allowed myself to love without conditions or agendas. And I have taught you and Rick to do the same, with terrible results." I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "It is going to take a lot more than one therapy breakthrough," I said carefully. "I know," she acknowledged. "I am not asking for your trust or even your time. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I have done, and I am sorry." After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time, thinking about patterns and choices. About how hurt gets passed down through generations until someone decides to break the cycle. I was not ready to let my mother back into my life completely, but her visit had shown me something important. I had broken the cycle. I had chosen love over status, authenticity over performance, genuine connection over calculated relationships. And in doing so, I had not just built financial success. I had built a life worth living. That evening, I came home to find Marcus cooking dinner in our kitchen. It was a far cry from the formal dining rooms of my childhood, with their place settings and silent servants. This was messy and chaotic and filled with love. "Good day," he asked, pulling me into a hug. "Complicated day," I replied, "but ultimately good." As we ate dinner together, laughing about his attempts at a new recipe, I thought about my wedding day. How it had started with such hope, been disrupted by cruelty, and ended with an unexpected vindication. How my family had called me a disgrace, only to discover I was worth more than they had ever imagined possible. But the real victory was not the money. It was sitting here with my husband, building a life based on genuine love and mutual respect. It was knowing that I had chosen wisely, not just in my career but in my partner. It was understanding that my worth was never determined by my family's approval or my bank account balance. A year after the wedding, Venture First Capital announced its first major philanthropic initiative, a $500 million fund dedicated to supporting female entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. At the press conference announcing the program, journalists asked me about my motivation. "I built my success without family support," I said simply. "But I had advantages they could not take away: education, connections, and confidence. Many women do not have those things. This fund is about leveling that playing field." The program made headlines and attracted significant attention. It also, inevitably, attracted another attempt from my family to reconnect. This time, they proposed I should involve them in the philanthropic work, suggesting the Wellington name could lend prestige to the initiative. I declined politely but firmly. "This is not about prestige," I explained in a letter to my father. "It is about results. If you want to be involved in meaningful philanthropy, start your own program. But you do not get to attach the Wellington name to my work just because you are finally impressed by my success." Marcus read the letter before I sent it and smiled. "Still standing your ground?" "Always," I replied. 2 years after the wedding, my mother and I had tentatively begun rebuilding our relationship. It was slow and careful, with clear boundaries. We met for lunch once a month, during which she never asked about my business or my money. Instead, we talked about books and art and slowly, about her childhood and the pressures that had shaped her. "I grew up believing love was something you earned," she told me during one of these lunches. "It never occurred to me that it could just be freely given." "That is sad," I said, and I meant it. "It is," she agreed. "And I am sorry I passed that belief onto you." My father never did come around. He remained convinced that his way of seeing the world was correct, that old money and social position mattered more than genuine accomplishment or character. Rick followed his example, his life a slow decline marked by failed business ventures and increasingly desperate attempts to trade on the family name. But I was at peace with their choices. I had learned that you cannot make people change or see what they are determined not to see. All you can do is live your own life with integrity and hope that eventually they find their own path. 5 years after the wedding that my family called a disgrace, Marcus and I welcomed our first child, a daughter we named Grace. As I held her in the hospital, I made a promise to myself and to her. I would never make her earn my love. I would never judge her worth by external measures of success. I would support her choices even when they differed from my own plans. I would break the cycle of conditional love and impossible expectations that had defined my family for generations. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, watching me with our daughter. "About how she will never know what it is like to feel unwelcome in her own family," I said. "About how we are going to raise her to value kindness over status, character over connections, love over money." "Sounds perfect," he said, kissing my forehead. The wedding where I was called a disgrace turned out to be the beginning of my greatest success. Not because my net worth was announced to a shocked crowd, though that moment of vindication was admittedly satisfying, but because it marked the moment when I finally, fully chose my own path. When I stopped waiting for approval that would never come and started building the life I actually wanted. My family thought they were pronouncing judgment on me that day in the church. They thought they were putting me in my place, reminding me of what I was giving up. What they did not realize was that they were setting me free. Free from the burden of their expectations. Free from the futile pursuit of conditional love. Free to become fully myself. Now, when I look back on that day, I do not remember the humiliation or the anger. I remember Marcus's face as I walked down the aisle. I remember the warmth of his family's welcome. I remember the feeling of making vows that meant something real. And yes, I remember the shock on my parents' faces when they realized their daughter, the one they had dismissed and belittled, was worth more than they could have imagined. But mostly I remember the moment when I stopped caring about their opinion and started living for myself. Because that is when my life truly began. If you have ever had to choose between family approval and your own happiness, share your story in the comments below. How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? What did you learn from the experience? Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Sometimes the people who call you a disgrace are simply revealing their own limitations, not yours. Your worth is not determined by anyone else's narrow definition of success. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the best revenge is not proving them wrong. It is building a life so full of genuine love and purpose that their opinions become irrelevant.